Hey guys, Clone Guy here, and today we are going to be taking a look at the 10 most played tanks in World of Tanks history here on console. Now, this obviously will favor tanks that have been in the game a little bit longer, so maybe we'll have to do a revised list a little bit later on that maybe only keeps track of the last year or the last month even. But for now, we're going to take at the most played tanks of all time. And unfortunately, I can't do both Xbox and PlayStation, so we've just done Xbox, seeing as that's been around a little bit longer, so we're going to get a little bit more of an accurate result there. And at number 10, we have the T110E5 with 4,235,468 individual games played in this tank in the 8 years this game has been around. And what's there not to love about this tank? This tank, when it came out, wasn't very good, but it was a tier 10 heavy tank, so people wanted it. There were only 3 of them at the time: FE215B, E100, and T110E5, and this was one of them. Plus, it was American. Then it got majorly buffed. Was super good, and then rebalanced to a point where I think it's in a very fair position right now, and that's where it's at. And it's solid. It's got a great line to grind up. And it's just a fun all-around tank. And plus, with the DPM buff it's recently received and the gun handling buff it's recently received, this tank is just easily in the top 10 for most played tanks. And there's good reasons for that, not just because it's an old tank. At number 9, we have the FE215B 183, aka the Death Star, the crown jewel of World of Tanks, probably for quite a few many years. In fact, it's still played quite often here in World of Tanks console, the Death Star. Even throughout all of its buffs and its nerfs and its rebalances throughout the years, it is still one of the most iconic tanks in this game. And this was the tank that got me into playing this game. I played it on a friend's account back in beta, and all I wanted was to get this tank. So when the game came out, I ground up for this thing first. This was the first thing I ever went for, and so did so many other players. And it is at number 9 with 4,269,866 games played. When you have the potential to one-shot virtually any tank in the game, well, it used to be a lot easier to one-shot almost any tank in the game. Now it's a lot harder, and more tanks have more health. But any medium tank in the game and most heavy tanks in the game, of course you're going to have a fun time with their 270 millimeters of HESH penetration, 1750 alpha damage, which is now down to, what, 240 pen, 230 pen, and unfortunately only 1400 alpha damage. But you still have the same AP shells of 310 penetration and 1150 alpha damage, plus huge module damage, meaning if you hit an ammo rack, you're going to one-shot whoever you're shooting. That, my friends, is the Death Star, the FE215B 183, and for very good reason. It is number 9. In fact, I'm surprised it's not even higher in this list. At number 8 is the Waffenträger Panzer IV, and I wish this was on the list because so many people like to play this tank, and it's a good tank. But it is a good tank. The reason it's on the list at number 8 is actually because re-rolled accounts like to use this tank to pad their stats. And so when you get a tank that gives you W8, gives you efficiency, gives you all that stuff, people like to play it over and over again. In fact, there's this one player, I think Pink is the name, who had, last time I checked, 4 years ago, 30,000 games in this tank. And so that is why this tank is so high up on this list, with 4,416,914 games played on the Xbox. Absolutely massive. It's got this fantastic gun. My favorite gun on any tank destroyer. I wish this tank had a version at tier 10. That would be so cool. With this gun, same kind of playstyle. Maybe make it a little sneakier, make it a little faster. Don't change anything else about the tank. It can even have the 1600 health. Make it kind of like an E25 or a charioteer, not quite as sneaky as an E25. Put this at tier 10, it would be so much fun. But this is my favorite gun on any tank destroyer, and in fact I consider it a tier 10 when I play it. It does not care what the matchmaking is. It just points and it clicks and things die because its gun is so accurate and so nice to use. This gun is the definition of German engineering, hands down. As far as German accuracy goes, this is German accuracy at its absolute finest. At number 7 is the Tier 9 American M103, which has been through some love and it's been through some hate. This tank's upper plate and overall armor used to be butter. I remember going up against these things in the old FV4202 and just auto-locking them. You could do that when you fought this thing. You could auto-lock the tank, and you would go through its upper plate, you'd go through its lower plate, you'd go through its turret armor. That was the best way to deal with these, just auto-lock, because it would go towards the upper hull, which was actually a weak spot. Now the tank is actually a heavy tank. It's been given 10 degrees of gun depression, a buffed reload, and more armor. Upper plate has more armor. Turret armor has more armor. This tank is now a heavy tank like it should have been all along. Maybe not all along, but with the new meta of World of Tanks, this tank now fits. It can now compete versus the Conqueror, which is the powerhouse of Tier 9 heavy tanks, in my humblest opinion. But this tank leads to the T110E5, so of course people have to play it when they want a T110E5, and that is why it is number 7 on the list with, I'll give you a total, 4,512,147 total games. That's a lot of gameplay. For sure, that's a lot of gameplay in the M103. The amount of games played, that's insane. If you actually try to count that, well, you're not going to do very well. It's going to take you a long time to actually count that. But the tank has made it that far, and people play it. And it's fun. I do enjoy it myself. So, number 7, M103. At number 6, we have the IS-3. And I was not expecting the IS-3 to make this list. If anything, I figured maybe the IS-7. But the IS-3 does. The IS-3 is a famous tank in real life and in this game, made famous by the mighty Jingles. And it sits at number 6 with 4,709,078 games. Of course, it's been played a few times since I recorded this video, but that's how many times it's been played at this point. And let me tell you, I wholeheartedly believe it deserves to be in this spot. This was a tank that I feared when it shot at me, but I didn't fear when I was shooting at it back in the day. And so I didn't get it. I was the kind of guy who I would play tanks which I thought could block damage. I would only get heavily armored tanks. And this tank, frankly, isn't that. And so I avoided it like the plague. But recently, I've had the pleasure to play it. And let me tell you, I wish I played it a long time ago. The gun is great. The armor works if you know how to use it. And the tank is just consistent. And I love consistent vehicles. I love consistent tanks, and that's what this tank is. It's consistency, and it's iconic. Yes, it is the IS-3, and yeah, it makes it at the halfway point of this list, and it deserves it. It really does. At number 5, we have the Tiger II, the infamous Tiger II, one of the most famous tanks in the world. The German Tiger II, with 5,034,353 games played. That's a big number. We're getting into absolutely massive numbers right now, and this tank is a dream. I thought it was a dream when I first played it. I'm like, this tank is awesome. Why did I think this tank wasn't that good? Its gun sings, its armor works, you can side scrape, it's mobile, it has gun depression, it's absurdly accurate, 0.31 accuracy without boosting it with a crew or equipment or consumables. 0.31. Holy Toledo, that is accurate. And now they've buffed its turret armor, and they've buffed its hull armor, and I think they buffed its reload too a little bit, if I'm not mistaken. So now it's a mini E75. Absolutely amazing. One of my all-time favorite tanks right now has to be the Tiger II, because it feels like a more accurate E75. Granted, E75, it's a lot easier to fight tier 10s in E75 than it is a Tiger II. But you get to fight little tiny rink-a-dink tier 6s in your Tiger II if you get good matchmaking. And you don't really get to do that in, the E75. Yeah, you can fight some tier 7s, but tier 6s, that is juicy. And this is one of the most famous tank lines going up to tier 10. You've got the Tiger II, E100, the infamous Siege tank that was never completed, but still, you can play it. You can take concepts in World of Tanks and bring them to life, and that's what's so great about this game, and that is why this tank is at number 5 in the most played tanks in the game. Simply because it deserves to be. At number 4, we have the T110E4 with 5,414,530 games played, and there's multiple reasons for that. One, it's a tank destroyer. One of the first tank destroyers in the game. Not the first. E3 was part of the first. This came out a little bit later, but you had an alternative instead of having to play the E3 and all those slow lumbering turretless tank destroyers. You could play slow lumbering turreted tank destroyers. Well, at least the tier 8 was kind of slow and lumbering. Otherwise, this tank it's not too slow. It really isn't. This whole line is not too slow. It moves around pretty decently, and once you get to tier 8, you start having a little bit of armor. You start having a little bit of turret armor. And this tank was a favorite among super unicums and regular unicums. Pretty much a favorite among tank destroyer advocates all over the world. All over the spectrum of unicums and timitos and all the other kind of names that we give people. Because, as you can see in this replay, you press that A button, or you don't even press that A button. You load nothing but APCR, and you auto-lock, and you fire, and you pen everything, seeing as you have 375 millimeters of APCR penetration with 850 alpha damage. On top of that, this tank was buffed to the point where what is the point of playing an E3 when you can go 10 kilometers an hour faster, and you have virtually the same armor, and you have a turret. It doesn't go all the way around, but it's still a flexible turret. Yowza! This tank is an absolute beast, and that is a very good reason why it's been played over 5 million times here on Xbox, because it's good. Is there any other reason to play a tank other than it's good? Nope, not really. Good tanks get played. Number 3 features arguably the most famous tank in the world, and that's the Tiger 1. Feared by allies, but, you know, not the greatest transmission, couldn't get over all the bridges, and broke down all the time. But the Tiger 1 with its 88mm gun, of course, in this game you have the L71, the long 88, not the short one that was historically used. But boy, oh boy, this long 88 L71 absolutely rips its opponents apart. Accurate, high penetration, high rate of fire, damage, damage, damage. It's a powerhouse. When you fight these things, they're fun and easy to kill, and you love fighting them. But when you play one, oh my goodness, it feels so good to play. And again, just like the Tiger 2, this is probably the most famous tank line in the game. Of course, people are going to be playing it. Both noobs and unicums alike are going to be playing this tank. That was me. I personally loved this tank, and I still love this tank, and I want to remark every single Tiger in the game. I love the Tigers. That's why it has 5,498,398 games played. Whew. That's a big number. I keep saying that's a big number, but that's another big number. That's a bigger number than it was before, because last time, the E4, it was less than that. Now it's more. Hence, number 3 on the list, and not number 5. Number 3, Tiger 1, Panzer V, right? Yeah, the Panzer V. No, Panzer VI. Panzer VI. Sorry, history buffs. My apologize. My apologize. My apologies. Let's just move on to the next one. At number 2, we have the American Tier 7 heavy tank, the T-29. This is the third American heavy tank to make it on this list. It jumps over T-32. T-32 was not widely accepted as good by players, but it was actually my favorite in the American heavy tank line for quite a while, and it still remains such. But the T-29, ranked number 2, takes a massive jump from 5.4 million games played in the Tiger to 6,373,373. Quite an interesting number. 6373373. Oh boy, good luck with that if you're dyslexic. The T-29, though not a famous tank in history, like the Tiger 1 was, squeaks past by almost 1 million in front of the Tiger 1. And why is that? Probably just because of how good this tank is. Tier for tier, I would argue it is likely in the top 5. One of the top 5 best tanks tier for tier in this game, if not even the best tank tier for tier in this game. Imagine being top tier in this thing, fighting tier 5s, and then compare yourself being top tier in the T125 fighting tier 8s. It's no comparison. This tank is absolutely devastating when it gets to fight things that are lower tier. In fact, it's got such a good turret, it can even fight things that are higher tier than it. Because nothing, well, some things can get through the turret, but most things can't get through this thing's turret. Even the tier 9 tank destroyers you fight struggle to get through this thing's turret, plus the 10 degrees of gun depression, and the 105 gun it has. It can do some serious work at any tier, and it's a fan favorite among noobs and among veteran players alike. People like this tank. Hence, 6.3 million games played. Holy Toledo. Finally, we have another tank, number 1, that rivals the T-29 in the best tank tier for tier category, and that is the British tier 9 Conqueror. You could just get rid of that Roman numeral I, that Roman numeral 1 in front of the X, and nobody would bat an eye. You could say this is a tier 10 tank, and everybody would be like, yep, that's right, it's a tier 10 tank. This tank used to not be good. Its turret was so bad. 127 millimeters of frontal turret armor was what it was back in the day. Now it's 254. And now you have 10 degrees of gun depression. And now you have 150 millimeters of frontal plate armor. And now you have 100 millimeters of side armor. And now you have safety heat screens, whatever you want to call those, on the side of the turret and the front of the turret, making this tank feel like a tier 10. But you get to fight tier 7s. Same argument as the T-29. Would you rather use the Super Conqueror versus tier 8s, or would you rather use the Conqueror versus tier 7s? I think that's a little bit of a closer argument, but I think most would say, yeah, this tank versus tier 7s is absolutely disgusting compared to the Super Conqueror versus tier 8s, which, by the way, is still absolutely disgusting. I mean, this line is pretty good. And there's a reason why this tank is played so much. A couple of reasons. You need a trifecta of reasons to be number 1 with 6,653,697 games played. 1, you need to be a good tank, which it is. Absolutely great tank. 2, you need to be a tank that pads stats. Guess what? This tank not only is a good tank, it also pads stats. 3, it needs to lead to something. There needs to be not only a reason to play for stats, not only a reason to play because it's good, but also a reason to play to get to the end game. End game being tier 10. And oh yes, this tank leads to 3 tier 10 heavy tanks, the FE-215B, the Super Conqueror, and the Chieftain Mark 6. Pick all 3 of those tanks and tell me you would rather be in those versus 8s than you would rather be in this versus 7s. And I will call you mad. I won't call you mad, I'll just say you have your own opinion. That's perfectly fine. This tank does work, and it's number 1, the most played tank in World of Tanks history here on console. The most played tank, the Conqueror, and it's no wonder you still see 2, 3, 4 of these things per game, sometimes 3 on each team. Yeah, the Conqueror, most played tank in the game, and I have to agree. I understand why. I love this thing. I absolutely love it. But that's going to be it for today's video. I hope you all enjoyed. If you did, slap that like button, comment, and subscribe. What are your most played tanks in World of Tanks? Do you have some that you like more than others? Of course you do. Do you have some you play more than others? Of course you do. Let us know in the comments below, and let us know if you play some of these tanks too. And I'll be seeing you guys all later. Go check out SpaceBANDIT. Like, comment, and subscribe. Take care, everyone, and peace out.